Inko Midoriya had always prided herself for her patience and ability to stay composed in stressful situations. She couldn't remember the last time she seriously snapped at someone or felt the urge to punch a wall. The patience was mostly out of necessity, given that her husband was a man-child with a flamethrower for a mouth. She meant that in the most endearing sense of the word, of course. Hisashi was the gentlest, kindest soul she had ever encountered, and she could never regret attending to his burns all those years ago. In that way, she considered it lucky that Hisashi discovered his fire breath didn't mix well with alcohol and intoxication at that dorm party. It certainly spared them from any accidents later in life. Considering all of the above, this damn pregnancy was seriously testing her patience. She had already endured 9 months of hell, filled with Hisashi's frequent jokes, and his inability or unwillingness to take things seriously was not helping. Though as her husband worriedly spoke to her in the back seat, while the Bakugo patriarch drove them to the hospital in the dead of night, she could only give a mental sigh of relief. The worst part was finally over, and it had better all have been worth it. Oh God, the worst part was definitely not over. She couldn't even concentrate enough to be annoyed at Hisashi for practicing his dad jokes with Masaru whenever he wasn't by her side. It took several excruciating hours, but as the signature crying of a baby filled the hospital room, right as the sun rose above the horizon, she couldn't help but feel the happiest she'd ever felt in her life. And not just because it was all finally over and they were both lying next to each other in the hospital bed, but because they were looking at the most adorable baby they'd ever seen, their adorable baby. The first thing to break the silence in the newly sunlit room was Hisashi, who looked like the definition of a proud dad, welcoming Izuku, their little sunshine, into the family. The nickname proved to be rather fitting as Izuku grew up over the years. He had the uncanny ability to always lighten up any room he entered. The way he hopped around any room whenever he was supposed to be sitting still, or how he excitedly babbled about whatever new thing he and Katsuki encountered, how he salivated over every plate of katsudon and gobbled it up with his chubby hands, how he diligently woke up to watch the sun rise and say goodbye to Hisashi in the morning, and the uwas and us whenever Hisashi showed off his totally super-duper awesome fire breath for the umpteenth time. Inko herself never thought much of her own quirk. It was useful for cooking and for keeping her son and husband on a leash, but she couldn't help but feel like it was one of the best whenever she did show it off to her little Izuku. Even Katsuki, whose personality would be the embodiment of the actual sun up close like the way Izuku's was the sun viewed from Earth, was significantly calmer whenever Izuku was around. Considering all of that, it might not be surprising that one day Inko was seriously concerned when Izuku was still in bed by the time school was supposed to start. He hadn't even clamped onto Hisashi's leg in a fit of giggles right before he left for work earlier in the morning, which she later learned over the phone from a slightly upset Hisashi. She could practically hear him pouting. Despite her worries, Inko brushed it aside for later and woke up a dazed Izuku. His 4th birthday party had been pretty tiring after all. A lot of kids had come to see Hisashi spit roasting the barbecue meat, his favorite trick, and Izuku had spent a good amount of time talking each guest's ears off about All Might. The worrying feeling returned in full force the following day as it got progressively harder to wake him up. According to his kindergarten teacher, Izuku had even fallen asleep in the middle of playtime. He ate less of his breakfast and dinner at home, even katsudon, and Inko suspected he threw away his lunch at school too. Inko decided enough was enough when Saturday morning Izuku woke up, burning to the touch and throwing up any food that entered his mouth. Hisashi's attempt at lightening the mood by suggesting they cook his breakfast eggs on Izuku's forehead was not appreciated either, though it did yield a few giggles from Izuku, so Inko let it slide. They decided to take Izuku to the hospital just in case for some general testing, which is how they found themselves in a small office with an older doctor whilst Izuku was resting in a room close by. The small room had been silent after they'd sat down, save for the soft ticking of an older clock in the corner and the occasional creaking of wood from Hisashi nervously shifting in his chair. It was almost calming to Inko if the sterile walls and medical charts didn't remind her that she was in the hospital for her baby boy. After a few seconds of this serene silence, the doctor put down the relevant medical files on his desk and addressed the pair in his room. "Well, Midoriya-san, We have bad news and good news regarding your son. The good news is that he does not seem to have caught any illnesses that we're aware of. We did, however, find an alarming decrease in the amount of mitochondria in his cells compared to previous records. That definitely sounded like the bad news. But Inko decided to keep quiet as she realized her husband wasn't the greatest when it came to the medical sciences and instead gave the doctor her patented get-on-with-it stare. To his credit, the balding man quickly got the message and went on to elaborate. Essentially, it means that his body seems to be gradually shutting down his metabolism. His inability to ingest any food seems to corroborate that. The good news, however, is that, given his age, this change seems to be related to his quirk instead of some genetic disorder. At this statement, Hisashi seemed to have been shaken out of his stupor as he angrily leaned forward. How exactly is my son's quirk slowly starving him to death? Good news in any way? Inko shared her husband's sentiments, but knew that antagonizing the professional wasn't the best course of action and interrupted Hisashi before he could continue. Quirks that actively harm their user are documented, but have basically become non-existent after the first few generations. Isn't that right, doctor? The doctor blinked at the unexpected bit of trivia, but quickly continued. That is completely correct, Midoriya-san. As for why this is good news, now that we know this is the work of your son's incoming quirk, we can start figuring out what exactly it is and why it seems to currently be harming your son so that we can hopefully find a way to counteract it. I hope you don't mind if we do some more specialized tests on him and see if he takes after either of you. Sounds of agreement filled the room, and with that the rest of the day was taken up by doctors and nurses moving a lethargic, sweating izuku around testing rooms, the only relief coming in the form of izuku greedily gulping down large bottles of water whenever they were given to him. It wasn't until after the sun had set that a different doctor entered the hospital room and asked if the parents could come with him to discuss the results. Inko only had to glance at the slumped figure next to her to understand that Hisashi had completely tired out from the frantic day, so she opted to join the doctor by herself, but not before gently tapping Hisashi's mess of hair to make sure he was at least somewhat awake. Hisashi just returned a lopsided smile and mumbled to her to compile the lecture notes for later before going back to his half-pretend, half-genuine sleep. Hisashi stayed in this position for 15 more minutes after Inko left until he was startled awake by Izuku screaming about everything being too hot, immediately running over to embrace his son's red-hot, glowing body in a tight hug, mumbling a seemingly never-ending stream of reassurances into his sunshine's ear as the room was quickly illuminated by an increasingly intense light. Inko Midoriya had always prided herself for her patience and her ability to stay composed in stressful situations. But after a whole day of stressing out and seeing her son being prodded everywhere, she really couldn't deal with a doctor who seemed extremely excited about the results and wasn't getting any closer to the actual point. So far, he had discussed how Inko's hands seemed to unnoticeably distort the space in front of them when her quirk was active, and how this same distortion was constantly present and much more noticeable within Izuku's stomach, and now he seemed to be finishing up on the specifics of Hisashi's flammable gas, but Inko still couldn't understand where the guy was going with all this. Before the doctor could continue on her husband's slight heat resistance, Inko decided to politely interrupt him to prevent her ever-present composure from finally breaking. "Doctor, I don't quite see how my husband's stomach producing his flammable breath by turning ingested water into hydrogen and oxygen gas is related to anything else you've said, or why my son's quirk is essentially starving him to death. And quite frankly, I think I've been away from my husband and son for a bit too long." The doctor, for the first time since she had entered his office, looked away from his reports with a creepily excited smile and hastily interrupted her as she was about to grab her purse and leave. "I'm so sorry, Midoriya-san. I'm just really excited, that's all. But think about it. The most logical explanation for why your son's body seems to be shutting down its metabolism is because it's preparing to switch to a completely different source of energy. Coupled with today's observations of your quirks, it seems his stomach has been gathering the hydrogen from the water he's consumed and is slowly compressing it in his stomach." Inko's eyes widened as the observations the doctor had been rattling off for the past 10 minutes finally clicked, and she couldn't stop herself from shouting her realization in disbelief. "You're saying my son's stomach is turning into a fusion reactor?" The doctor just nodded excitedly, and the fact he acted like Izuku would have been funny if he wasn't an old, stubby, bespectacled man that looked like he was seconds away from taking Izuku for himself. Yes, isn't it exciting? Once again, quirks are doing what we never could have achieved with science for at least another century. Since this quirk is somehow locally manipulating gravity like yours, but to an even higher degree, it completely bypasses the known practical issues of needing enough mass or a high enough temperature to generate the immense pressures needed to facilitate artificial self-sustaining fusion. As long as we keep providing him with water, the hydrogen in his stomach will eventually reach a critical limit for kickstarting the fusion process, and afterwards your son should be completely fi-dash. Whatever the doctor had wanted to say was cut off by a loud scream coming from the relatively empty ward Inko knew Izuku was in. She immediately ran out of the small office, but had to shield her eyes as a bright flash of light filled the hallway. Before it, and her son's screams died down. Without slowing down, she entered the hospital room only to be greeted by her husband and son in a tight embrace on a bed that was barely standing on its half-molten frame. Izuku being surrounded by a soft, golden, glowing aura that was already dimming. After a few seconds of silence, the bed finally collapsed to the ground, shaking Izuku and Hisashi out of their stupor as they parted and started laughing over the weirdness of the situation, until Hisashi hissed in pain and revealed bright red blistering burns all over his arms. Seeing his son starting to panic, he quickly joked about not expecting to need sunscreen tonight, which did its job of calming Izuku back down into a fit of giggles. Inko hadn't realized how tense she had been as for the first time that day all tension left her shoulders as she tried to hide an ugly snort. Everything was wrapped up fast after that incident. Just some last few checkups on Izuku and quick treatment of Hisashi's burns. Luckily, his decent fire resistance spared him from the bedframe's fate, and the Midoriyas walked out of the hospital with burn cream and tired faces, but accompanied by an absolutely glowing sun, figuratively and sometimes literally. The days following the incident were a lot less stressful, though no less busy. At first, Izuku felt guilty about burning his dad, but that was quickly replaced by the excitement of exploring his own quirk. As they were later told, the light produced by the fusion of hydrogen was absorbed by a specialized organelle that had been reconstructed out of the original mitochondria, which formed a protective layer around the cell's nucleus and stored the energy for later use while using part of it in the production of ADP. Izuku was a little bummed out that he couldn't really ingest too much of anything except water anymore. But the later discoveries of having almost infinite stamina, needing barely any sleep, and receiving a significant boost to most biological functions including his immune system and his natural healing as long as he regularly drank water more than made up for it. It was quite tiring for Inko to constantly run after him at 1 a.m., but nothing was as tiring as her husband's insistence of pointing out that their child was now literally their little sunshine at every opportunity. In the following week, with Izuku and Hisashi staying home together, more of these discoveries were made. The morning after the hospital visit, they quickly found out that Izuku passively generated a skin-tight magnetic field after he excitedly showed his dad he could finally balance a spoon on his nose, only to then find he couldn't actually get the spoon off at all, and Inko had to stop her husband from accidentally putting his foot on Izuku's head during his attempts at removing the accursed thing. The doctors speculated that the produced helium plasma seeped into his bloodstream, and the moving charges were generating a small-scale magnetic field that helped shield others from the harmful radiation that wasn't immediately absorbed by Izuku's body. The Quirk counselors suggested that Izuku could potentially control the flow of the helium plasma, allowing him to change the shape and intensity of the magnetic field. The day after that, they discovered that the circulating helium exited through his lungs after he accidentally inhaled the contents of a balloon he'd been inflating for the Quirk manifestation party Hisashi had made up on the spot and spoke in a somehow even squeakier voice than normal. Inko had walked into the living room that morning to find Hisashi dying from laughter on the floor with Izuku fretting over him while doing a flustered chipmunk impression, prompting her husband to laugh even harder. As for the magnetic field, during all the extra free time at night, Izuku found out he could release a portion of the stored radiation as light, and if he budged and magnified the field just right, he could recreate the aurora borealis around his body. That trick immediately won over all his classmates when he returned to kindergarten after his week-long absence. Over the year, Izuku developed a habit of passively emitting light whenever he got scared or nervous, but it also started happening whenever he got really excited. It would take a few years before he gained full control over that aspect of his quirk, and Inko was grateful when Hisashi brought up buying sunglasses. She was less grateful when it turned out he only ordered All Might-themed ones. Izuku's room already makes the All Might Museum gift shop look like a cheap knockoff. He doesn't need more encouragement, Hisashi. By the time Halloween rolled around, Izuku had enough control over his light and magnetic field to make his aura look like flames. He decided to dress up as Endeavor that year with Katsuki as All Might. They quickly discovered that Izuku couldn't scowl without it looking like a pout, and that Katsuki couldn't smile as bright without looking like a crazed psychopath. Before the boys could get too upset, Hisashi threw on a dollar store cape, kneeled in front of them, and booped both their noses. "I am the evil villain. Mind swap, and I just swapped your minds. You could never hope to beat me now, heroes." Hisashi then quickly ran off doing his interpretation of a maniacal laugh before he got tackled by the pair of gremlins. All in all, the past year had been extremely taxing on Inko, but her husband's carefree attitude, booming laughter, and never-ending optimism never failed to make her feel a bit lighter. Considering all of that, it might not be surprising that Inko started getting concerned when Hisashi became less energetic sometime after her own birthday. Not from any lack of trying. He still managed to cheer everyone up, but he couldn't match Izuku's excitedness anymore. He didn't take the opportunity to make jokes or pranks whenever he could, and whenever he laughed it was usually interrupted by a hacking cough. It all came to a head when Inko found Hisashi coughing up blood in the toilet a little after Izuku's 5th birthday. Despite his half-hearted reassurances that it was just that morning's jam, they soon found themselves back at the hospital in front of a doctor, and this time without a happy conclusion. "I'm sorry to say this, Midoriya-san, but I'll put it bluntly. It appears you have cancer. And from what we're seeing, it's advanced quite rapidly to stage 4. I'm not quite sure how this has gone unnoticed for so long, especially since you were completely fine a year ago, but I don't think this can really be treated anymore unless you're willing to part with a significant sum of money for experimental treatment. It is quite a shame that the medical field regarding cancer has practically stopped any and all advancements since the emergence of quirks." The doctor shook her head in a disapproving manner before returning her gaze towards the pair. "Still, it is quite baffling how this happened. Did you perhaps come into contact with any highly ionicing sources the past year or so?" Inko was too dazed to really come up with a response, but surprisingly Hisashi wasn't and piped up. "Well, my son has a unique quirk that produces some radiation, and I was hugging him when it manifested, but the worst I received from that were some burns thanks to the fire resistance I get from my quirk, and the doctors assured us that his quirk shields the outside world from the worst of the radiation, so I don't quite see." The doctor shook his head. "Well, Midoriya-san, I have taken the opportunity to look into some of the medical records concerning your son, and it's quite possible that the initial burst overwhelmed his body's natural defense systems. That and the helium that's attributed to the generation of the magnetic field wouldn't have been produced in any significant quantities yet at the point of ignition, so." As the doctor trailed off, a silence fell over the room, one that Inko couldn't bear to listen to any longer as she swiftly stood up. "I think my husband and I have heard enough medical talk today, doctor, so let's cut to the chase. How long do you expect he has?" The doctor sighed and slumped slightly in her armchair. "I estimate you have about a month left before you're confined to a hospital bed most of the time. I know these things are never fun to hear, but I hope you'll make the most out of it with your family." And with that, the door to the doctor's office slammed shut slightly too forcefully as the Midoriyas left. Their ride back home that day was filled with tense silence. By the time they reached their own neighborhood, Inko couldn't take it anymore. "Hisashi, I dash. He can never know, Inko." She looked at her husband to see him giving the most serious, solemn stare she'd ever seen from him. "Hisashi, what do you mean?" His knuckles went white as he clenched his hands around the steering wheel. "If Izuku finds out about this, you know what he's like, Inko. He'll never touch his quirk again beyond the bare minimum needed to live. You've seen how happy he is with it, how many plans he's made with it. I can't just take that all away from him." Inko gulped as her mind's eye supplied the image of a somber, shut-in teen, that bright smile of his wiped from existence. Hisashi, it was a one-time occurrence. He'll surely understand dash. You know he won't. That's just who he is. He cut her off. And even if he did, if his classmates find out about this, even just from rumors, I don't even want to know how they might treat our boy. You know how enraptured with heroes and villains kids his age are. They'll start treating him like heroes treat villains. We also can't just tell him I have cancer. He's smart enough to figure out what really happened if we do that. Inko opened and closed her mouth, trying to come up with any rebuttal, but could only respond by defeatedly slumping in her seat. What do you suppose we do then? Hisashi glanced at her as he turned into their street. For now, I'll take time off from work and spend it with you too. And you should probably start looking for a job, but I'll see if I can think of something in the meantime. Izuku thought he was pretty good with understanding emotions. Daddy always told him that he never knew how Izuku could keep that Pomeranian on a leash, which sounded like a pretty mean thing to call Kakin, but Daddy was never serious about anything, so it was okay. That was also why Izuku didn't like how the past few months had gone. Daddy seemed a lot sadder now, and he didn't know how to fix it. And after yesterday, Mommy was sad too. Kakin just told him that Uncle and Auntie probably ran out of patience for dealing with your shitty hyperactive ass, stupid nerd, during recess. And Izuku knew he just had to fix that, so he waited for dinner before speaking up. Mommy, why are you and Daddy sad? Kakin said you're tired because of me, but I didn't mean it. Maybe I can give you some of my energy and dash. Mommy swallowed and interrupted Izuku's mumbling before he could get too caught up in his thoughts. Izuku, sweetie, it's not your fault. It's just that me and your father heard some interesting news. Daddy then coughed a bit and spoke up. So, Izuku, you know that I work for a support company, right? Izuku lit up. Yeah, you make the bestest support items for fire quirks. You even helped create parts of Endeavor's hero costume. He rambled excitedly as he stood up on his chair. Daddy flashed his signature grin and waited for Izuku to sit back down. That's right. And my boss thinks I'm doing such a good job that he talked to his bosses over in America, and now they want me to go over there to start making support items for the heroes there. That was something Izuku's young mind could barely comprehend. Holy whoa, so you're going to help even more heroes? Are you going to go to the same places All Might went? This is so cool. I have to tell Kakin. He was just about ready to jump off his seat and run out when Daddy spoke again. Oh well. It's a bit of a secret that I'll work there since the company doesn't want any peepers, so I hope you can keep it to yourself, all right, sunshine? Izuku bobbed his head up and down as fast as his super stamina charged body would allow. He stopped when he realized something else. When do you have to go there, Daddy? Daddy looked thoughtfully before he answered, the plane leaves in about a week, so that's when I'll be going. That seemed to satisfy Izuku, and he went back to playing with his All Might and Endeavor action figures, not noticing the worried, guilty glances his parents exchanged with one another. The week had gone by in a flash. Izuku knew a lot of light-based puns. He blamed Daddy for that, and the Midoriya family were standing at the front door under the night sky, starting to brighten with the imminent sunrise. Uncle Masaru was outside in his car, waiting to pick Daddy up. Izuku was happily rambling away in the meantime, however. And apparently in America, you can get special licenses so you can use your quirk in public. Are you going to get one of those? Will you show off your quirk there too? They're going to think it's amazing, just like me and Kakin. Do you think they have special young All Might merch over there, since he went to college and met David Shield there, and he also dash? Izuku, I do actually have to leave on time for my plane, you know. Daddy looked sheepish, but also a bit sad as he cut him off. It was then that it dawned on Izuku how far away America was exactly, as his sight became blurry with tears. Daddy, how long are you going to be away? Daddy's eyes fell. I don't know, sunshine. Maybe the big bosses will think I do my job so well that they don't want me to leave. Maybe when I get tired I could start doing a bad job, so they'll let me go. Izuku huffed at that. No, Daddy, you can't just do that. That would be bad for the heroes that use the support items. Daddy chuckled. Izuku didn't think it was very funny though. Daddy, how will you be able to see me all the way from America if your job doesn't want you to call us? It's so far away from here, Izuku said as he started panicking before Daddy ruffled his hair and pointed at the sky. Do you see all those stars in the sky, Izuku? Do you remember what that pretty picture book said about them? Izuku was a bit confused, but nodded hesitantly. Yeah, they're really far away, right? Daddy nodded with a pleased grin. Correct, way further away than America is from here. But despite that distance, we can still see them all the way from here. And I know that no matter what you want to do in the future, you'll always be a star in it. That's just how you are, Izuku. I'm gonna be a hero, though. They're the coolest. Izuku huffed again, before he came to another conclusion. But there are so many heroes in Japan, Daddy. How are you gonna know which star is me if there are so many? Daddy looked thoughtfully in the distance before squinting as the morning sun started rising above the horizon. There's something that book didn't say, though. Did you know that the sun is also a star? Izuku looked surprised at that. Wait, really? But it doesn't look like the other stars. Yeah, it's because the sun is the closest and thus the biggest and brightest star in the sky. Izuku, promise me you'll be just like the sun, the brightest star in the sky. That way, when I and everyone else all over the world look up, we'll know it's you. Daddy flashed him a thumbs up. Izuku smiled brightly at the challenge. Kaken would totally say it's a challenge after all. Definitely, Daddy. I'm gonna be the greatest and brightest hero, just like All Might. He then proceeded to pull off his scarily accurate All Might impression and started laughing just like his idol. Daddy laughed with him. Actual, real, booming laughter. Izuku realized something he hadn't heard from Daddy in a while. The moment was interrupted by a car horn. At that, Daddy seemed to sadden a bit again. Well, I think I've stalled for long enough. Don't think I'm gonna forget our little promise, sunshine. In the future, I'm gonna expect to see you up there, and you're gonna be so bright that I'll go blind for staring too long because I forgot to put on sunglasses. Izuku cackled at the mental image of Daddy working at his job, and then seeing Izuku's face plastered on the sun. What kind of ridiculous idea is that anyway? As Daddy ruffled his hair and kissed Mommy, before entering Uncle Masaru's car and excitedly waving at them as the car drove off. If Izuku hadn't been too preoccupied with his special promise with Daddy, he would have noticed that Uncle Masaru's car wasn't going in the direction of the airport. It was about 10 years later that Inko found herself in a familiar situation, situated in their apartment's hallway as Izuku was standing in the doorframe with his fresh school uniform, ready to join Katsuki in Masaru's car to be driven to UA for the first day. Do you have your tissues? And your notebooks? Don't forget those. She was greeted with an exasperated sigh. Mom, don't worry. Seriously, I'm gonna be fine. I've got everything ready. Inko nodded with a watery smile. I'm sorry, baby. I just can't help but worry for you. I know you'll be just fine over there. I know UA is a pretty serious place, but don't forget to have some fun. Izuku flashed a sheepish grin. Oh, and it was so similar to Hisashi's. Got it. And I'll make sure the homeroom teacher will remember that too. Inko waved her son goodbye before getting back inside and closing the door behind her. She knew the day that Izuku would be fully independent was getting closer and closer, but she didn't want to imagine how dark the house was going to be without her son and husband. That was also partly the reason why she was never able to bring herself to tell Izuku that Hisashi had died in an accident at work, like she and Hisashi had originally planned. She was too afraid that Izuku would lose his brightness if she told him that, and she had plenty of time to tell him in the future anyway. She did pride herself on her patience and ability to stay composed after all. It had been the most difficult at the start. Hisashi had lasted a lot longer in the hospital bed than either of them had expected, but she was glad that Izuku hadn't known about or witnessed any of it. Seeing her beloved husband grow dimmer and dimmer until he eventually flickered out had put a significant strain on her mental health. And then there was what she saw once he died after 6 months of hospitalization, when they had to. No, that didn't happen. That was just from the nightmares. Especially when it was her baby in his place instead. Stop thinking about it, Inko. You'll just invite the nightmare in tonight at this point. Speaking of, it hadn't helped either that Izuku kept asking about his daddy during the latter's last few months. But the occasional letter and America-exclusive hero merch from Hisashi was enough to placate him. Masaru had been pushing her to tell Izuku as well, and she regretted giving Masaru the cold shoulder whenever he did. The man had been happy to secretly set aside part of his sizable salary as a hero costume designer to keep Inko afloat after all. There was no way she could have a job, not when her baby still needed her here to greet him back home. Hisashi was my first friend and the one who introduced me to my current job and employer. It's the least I could do. Eventually, after the first year or so, Izuku started mentioning Hisashi less and less until he dropped it altogether. Inko wasn't even sure whether Izuku still remembered him at this point. That was also the other reason why she couldn't bring herself to tell him. He'd gotten used to the current situation and seemed totally content. She didn't want to suddenly bring all of that back up again, especially if Izuku didn't remember. Inko also knew that if Izuku really wanted to find out, it'd be rather easy. Hisashi's ashes had still been buried at the family grave, and she had his death certificate stored someplace safe. If he ever did, Inko knew she'd have to face the consequences, but for now she was content with the way things were. It had to be. Izuku was so much like his father after all. Izuku was pressed up against the car window, absently counting the amount of trees they'd passed. He wasn't a stranger to Mom's fretting, but it could get a bit annoying, especially since his quirk kept him pretty safe and healthy. He did understand where she was coming from, though. He'd experienced an attempted kidnapping around the age of 9 after all. One moment he was strolling through the back alleys he and Kaken loved to run through, and the next he woke up in some sort of dilapidated warehouse, with some scientists standing near him, talking to himself about exploratory something before he arrived. He annoyingly, or perhaps thankfully, couldn't remember much of anything, except for the scientist leaving once an overwhelming, dangerous presence approached him. So overwhelmingly dangerous that for the first time in his life Izuku had tried to expel all of his quirk's energy at once. He hadn't tried that again since. Well, until the entrance exams anyway. The zero-pointer being almost completely erased from existence matched his vague recollection of the warehouse, and all surrounding buildings being replaced by a crater as he ran away, the sounds of large explosions and constant shock waves emanating behind him. He was luckily able to find his way back home safely thanks to some police officers, but that hadn't stopped Mom from going crazy and putting him in a bubble-wrapped bedroom for a few days straight. Oi, nerd. I'm not gonna wait for you forever, damn it. I'm not gonna be late on the first fucking day at UA because of you. Izuku was shaken out of his reminiscence by Kaken's loud voice, realizing that they had stepped out of Uncle Masaru's car a while ago, and he had just been standing there, staring at UA's imposing towers. Kaken was already walking ahead, but Izuku couldn't help but look at the towers in awe again. This was it, his first step towards becoming a hero. He knew that Kaken wanted to become a hero so he could show everyone that he was the strongest, but Izuku had a different reason. He wanted to be the brightest hero out there, so bright that everyone, far and wide, would know that he'd be there for them. He wanted to be the light that would help lead those in the dark towards a brighter future. He wasn't quite sure where that desire had originally come from anymore. Like most of his childhood memories, it was all vague, but whenever he thought about it, he could hear booming laughter in his mind. So it must have come from his adoration of All Might. He was his idol after all. Speaking of, All Might was going to be teaching this year. This is going to be amazing, he shouted, before getting some weird looks from bystanders. Upon further inspection, Izuku realized the weird looks were actually eyes being squinted, and he sheepishly turned off the light he'd been emitting before running towards the entrance gate, hoping to catch up with Kaken. He couldn't help but wonder, though. The booming laughter had felt gentler and more comforting than All Might's laughter ever had. Name: Midoriya Izuku. Quirk: Starborn. Passive: Focus/Resource. Energy/Generation/Stockpile. Energy/Manipulation/Healing type. Description: the user's stomach has mutated to isolate hydrogen atoms from digested water, which it then compresses until the pressure is great enough to facilitate microscale fusion. The resulting radiation is mostly absorbed by special organelles that also serve as a protective coating around the nucleus for the cell's genetic material. The stored energy is slowly used up to generate ADP in a specialized process. The helium plasma produced by the fusion circulates through the bloodstream and is exhaled through the mouth, where it's quickly cooled back to room temperature. The moving charges generate a small-scale magnetic field. Limitations: the user requires a large amount of water every day to keep up the fusion process. The stored energy is enough to keep the user alive for a while, but if the hydrogen goes under a certain level, the fusion process will likely stop. needing a much larger amount of water before being able to kickstart again. Applications. The user can expel the stored energy as radiation, with high-frequency radiation requiring more energy than lower-frequency radiation. The magnetic field catches high-ionizing radiation and turns it into non-ionizing radiation. The user can control the intensity and speed of the helium plasma in different parts of the bloodstream, allowing them to manipulate the shape and intensity of the magnetic field, which has the effect of shaping the emitted light/heat. Without manipulating the magnetic field, the emitted light/heat will take the shape of a comfortable, warm, golden aura. The user can use the magnetic field to concentrate the emitted light/heat and release it in attacks akin to solar flares in specific directions. The user can also expel all excess energy at once, generating an explosion similar to a miniature supernova, at the cost of being extremely lethargic for a while. All of Izuku's original excitedness of starting his tenure at UA had quickly evaporated once he entered the building and realized he had absolutely no idea what the building's layout was. He did find what looked like a floor plan near the entrance, but he couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Who writes on a floor plan in code? And that wasn't even talking about the 3 separate entrance doors. Why use a door for each of the year levels when they all led to the same entrance space? After squinting at the floor plan for a few minutes, all the lines started blurring together. So Izuku just gave up and went with the tried and true method of frantically wandering around but trying to look composed while doing it. Ugh, why did Kaken have to go ahead? I'm sure he found the classroom first try and is already sitting there, mocking everyone who arrives later than him. Oh gosh, he's going to yell at every classmate and call them all extras before I even get there and make a horrible first impression. I have to get there quickly. Once the first bell rang through the halls, Izuku gave up on looking composed and started sprinting around. He screeched to a halt when a blonde blur came around the corner and slammed into the wall on the other side. The person fell to the ground with a thump, and Izuku jolted into moving. Having completely forgotten about the Kaken problem, Izuku ran to the figure sitting on the ground clutching their head and channeled his inner mom. Oh my gosh, are you alright? Do you need to go to the nurse's office? What were you even thinking, running straight into a solid wall? How many fingers am I holding up? The blonde teen held up one hand to interrupt Izuku, and, wait, is that black lightning bolt natural or dyed? Is ITT from a quirk? How would it? Not the time, Izuku, he's talking. Zone in. Dude, calm your non-existent tits, I'm fine. I've had worse anyway, really. The teen groaned as he stumbled back up onto his feet. Why did you do that, though? Izuku asked. The blonde boy sheepish shrugged. I honestly have no idea where my classroom is. So here I was, running around the entire building when I saw this cheery, buff, blonde dude walking around, and, he looked like he knew his shit. So I followed him until I saw him going through that wall. I thought it was like a platform 9 3/4 situation, you know. You thought UA had secret magical passageways. The teen grinned. Imagine how cool it would be if they did actually exist. He slapped his side in disappointment. Oh well, bummer. Hey, do you know where the 1A classroom is? Now it was Izuku's turn to look sheepish. I was actually frantically sprinting everywhere to find it before you ran into that wall. The blonde boy, gosh, he still didn't know his name yet, did he? Fell back down on his knees with a comically anguished expression on his face. Oh God, I'm never gonna make it to class on time. Broccoli dude dash. Midoriya. Izuku deadpanned. Yeah, whatever, Midoriya. If I don't make it to class, tell our classmates that I love them. Are you sure you're fine? Do you have a concussion maybe? The teen frowned. Bro, not cool. You're supposed to go along with it. That's, part of the bro code. Oh, I'm sorry. Kaminari. All right, Kaminari-kun, let's do our best. Izuku raised his fist and smiled. Izuku got interrupted when a nearby door slid open and an annoyed-looking girl with earphone jacks attached to her earlobes appeared in the, frankly unnecessarily large, doorframe. Can you guys shut up already? I already have to deal with a shouting match in the classroom, and I have seriously sensitive ears. Both teens looked at the open door and realized that 1A had been staring at them in bright red coloring for the entirety of their conversation. Oh. After sheepishly entering the classroom, Izuku took stock of the classmates that were already present which was most of the class actually. His Kaken alarm went off before he could start taking in all the visible mutations, and he zoned in on said blonde, arguing with a tall teen that appeared to be doing the robot with his hands. Really think you can call your esteemed classmates extras? All of us have a name, and I expect you to learn them. Kaken just leaned back in his chair and let a cocky grin spread across his face. Huh? Do you have a stick up your ass or something? He snapped his fingers. Oh, I get it. You're just jealous that I arrived here earlier than you. Did you expect to be the first by arriving 10 minutes early, Four Eyes? The teen who had been officially christened Four Eyes looked offended and gasped. Jealous? I would. How could you, I dash. Izuku decided now was the best time to interject and spoke up from the doorway. Kaken, no blue screening your classmates on the first day of classes. We talked about this before. Kaken turned his gaze towards him with an amused grin. Oi Izuku, fucking finally. Didn't think you'd show up. Well, that's what you get for stalling me. Before Izuku could come up with a comeback, Four Eyes rebooted his OS and power walked over. Greetings, my name is Tenya Ida. I wanted to congratulate you on taking the top scores for the exam. It's clear that you figured out the secret grading system, and I feel ashamed to not have done so myself. I wish to apologize for accusing you of trying to interfere. Before Izuku could respond, Ida made a perfect 90-degree bow, and Kaken spoke up from his desk instead. Huh? You seriously didn't guess that there was something besides destroy robots? Even I figured out the rescue points, and I only gave a shit about destroying those metal fuckers. Another shit-eating grin appeared on his face. Hey, how'd it feel, having to beat up your relatives? Ida did a full 180-degree turn and went back to looking aghast. I can assure you that I am not a robot. As the two went back to their arguing, Izuku noticed a stoic-looking teen in the back observing Ida's calves with a contemplative look on his face. Izuku then felt someone's gaze piercing his back, and he swirled around to find a strangely familiar blonde teen staring at him. No, wait. At something behind my right shoulder? But there's nothing there. Seriously, what is up with blondes at UA? Oh, he's actually looking at me now. Zone back in, Izuku. The teen skipped over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. Ah, monsieur, I was hoping you'd get in. Je suis Aoyama, and I wanted to thank you for saving moi from that zero-pointer. Ah, is that where I recognized him from? I barely even looked when I heard that scream. It was Trace Magnifique. You truly were the dazzling star of the exam. The sparkles around his face seemed to decrease at that last statement. Wait, there were sparkles around his face? Oh, Aoyama just pecked me on the cheeks. Isn't that a customary greeting in France? Wait, he's French, right? Those were French words at least. Oh, and now there's a giant caterpillar laying at my feet. Is this my life at UA now? Has me getting into UA all been a fever dream after passing out from attacking the zero-pointer? Before Izuku could continue having an existential crisis, said caterpillar stood up to reveal a scruffy-looking man. The man silently looked him over with an appraising look before humming and finally speaking up in a tired, drawling voice. You're Izuku Midoriya, right? The one that shaved off a good chunk of UA's annual budget by obliterating the zero-pointer. The disapproving glare intensified as Izuku gulped and nodded hesitantly. That appeared to be sufficient for the man. Good enough. My name is Shota Aizawa. I'll be your homeroom teacher. I could hear you hellions all the way from the teacher's lounge, and the coffee machine broke this morning. So take this. Aizawa-sensei threw what looked like a PE uniform at a stiff and confused Izuku. I'm not even going to bother calming you lot down, so go inform your classmates that they have to put those on, and then meet me at the PE grounds in 10 minutes, or be expelled. Aizawa-sensei turned around and calmly walked away from the classroom, leaving behind a panicking Izuku. Wait, I have to calm all of them down. In the end, Izuku decided on flashbanging the entire class to get their attention, and after a panic struggle, they all managed to find their way to the PE grounds in time, standing in front of their homeroom teacher in tense silence. Aizawa-sensei looked at them as he slowly grabbed a juice pouch and sucked it empty, focusing on Izuku afterwards with another hum. It seems everyone is on time. Good job, I guess, Midoriya. He then proceeded to address the class as a whole. I already told your classmate, but my name is Shota Aizawa. I will be your homeroom teacher here at UA. A pink-skinned, horned girl with black scara. Oh wow, how did I not notice her before? raised her hand but was cut off by Aizawa-sensei. No, we will not be attending any entrance ceremonies or the like. I prefer to use my time more logically, so instead, I'll be putting you through a quirk apprehension test. This assessment will be made up of 8 individual tests. As Aizawa-sensei continued explaining the makeup of the assessment in his droning voice, Kaken elbowed Izuku in the side and gave his trademark, feral Pomeranian smile accompanied by a few pops from his quirk. Going straight into showing off our quirks, huh? I'm starting to like this hobo already. Said hobo appeared to be listening more intently than he had been letting on as Kaken was suddenly ensnared in a snake-like object and pulled towards the man. Showing off, huh? If you seriously think the hero course is a place where you can just relax and show off your quirks, then you should leave and go join a circus instead. Kaken, never one to have respected his teachers in the past, bit back. Huh? You think I'm some kind of clown? How about you look in the mirror first? 'Cause you look like the bearded lady's lost love child. I'm here to become the strongest hero, and the first thing I'll do is show these extras who the alpha is. Really laying on the Pomeranian there, huh, Kaken? Aizawa-sensei quirked an eyebrow. Well, since you're so eager to show off, throw this ball as far as you can with your quirk. Kaken happily obliged, resulting in the earphone jack girl crying out from the sound of the resulting explosion and scream, and Aizawa-sensei, showing off a score of 705.2 meters on his measuring device with a lazy grin. It seems Bakugo can back up his words with actions. Let's see if you all can do the same. Izuku sighed. At least Kaken antagonizing the teacher didn't totally backfire for all of us like back in Aldera. Aizawa-sensei wasn't done yet, though. Talking about showing who the alpha is, though, let's go with that. Whoever comes in last place will be judged as the omega of the group and will be expelled on the spot. A sadistic grin that rivaled Kaken's appeared on the man. Here at UA, we have no place for omegas, so show me that you're worth staying here. Izuku paled and zoned out as a girl with a permanent blush on her face cried out in protest. I guess I was asking for too much, huh? Luckily, Izuku didn't have much to worry about since he was able to score relatively high scores on most of the tests with purely his enhanced, infinite stamina and some assistance from low-powered solar flares. Yes, he and Kaken already had several super moves thought up before middle school even started. Blame all their hero versus villain games. He did notice some of his classmates looking disappointed at him whenever he finished a test. I guess I did put up unreasonably high expectations back during the entrance exam. I'm still doing pretty good, but I haven't had any real standout scores yet. At least the ball throw is coming up, so I could make my mark there. As it was finally Izuku's turn at the ball throw, he could feel some anxiety seep into his stomach as he walked up to the circle. Oh man, I have my solar flares, but I've been focused on getting those to work properly with Kaken for way too long. Stupid. I should have realized that wouldn't cut it anymore at UA. I need something new and powerful, and right now. Focus Izuku, dang it. Think of something already. Izuku thought back to Kaken, who had the flashiest ball throw so far. I got it. I could try and expel all my energy like my supernova, but fully focused through the palm of my hand. Oh man, I hope Kaken won't mind me taking from his style for this. Izuku put his body into a low, stable stance and aimed the arm holding the ball at a 45-degree angle, supporting it with his other arm by holding it at the wrist. All right, no time like the present to test this out. Izuku's golden aura flared up and started thrashing around faster and more violently as he pulled as much energy as possible out of his stockpile. He then directed the torrents of pure energy coursing through his whole body towards his right arm, his aura rippling towards it as he did so, and started manifesting a piece of his internal sun in his hand, the golden aura around it condensing and turning a bright white as harsh winds started emanating from his palm, the surrounding air rapidly heating up and expanding from the now infernal temperatures. By the time the pressure in his hand finally built to a crescendo, Izuku had already come up with a fitting name. New ultimate move, Gamma Ray Burst. Izuku finally pushed all of the pent-up energy against the palm of his hand and released his magnetic hold as all of the plasma around his hand condensed into a singular brilliant point directly behind the ball, only to abruptly fizzle out and disperse. Shocked by the abrupt stop, Izuku dropped the ball, falling on the ground in front of him with several thumps as ice-cold dread settled in his stomach. He looked back to his classmates, who looked just as bewildered, as a queasy, bloated feeling suddenly started building up. Izuku groaned and bent over, clutching his belly. Wait, those descriptions feel a lot more literal than I meant them to dashed. Izuku yelped as a sudden flash of white-hot pain came from his stomach. Shota Aizawa would say that this day was turning out to be a 3 out of 10, pretty shit, but he definitely had worse. It all started yesterday evening when, instead of getting a full night's rest for once, which he always aimed for the day before the new school year, he had to pull an all-nighter helping All Might set up and register his personal UA staff account, because of course the Blondo forgot about that. If that wasn't bad enough already, all coffee machines on UA grounds broke overnight because of some glitchy software update, and his current class was turning out to be even more disruptive than last year's at the start of the term. Again, not the worst he'd been through by far, but a solid 3 out of 10 nonetheless. So when Shota saw the child who turned the zero-pointer into literal hot air walk up to the circle with a scarily determined look on his face, he knew something was going to happen to turn his day into a 2 out of 10. Shota knew that kind of look. It was the look he saw on one of his students right before they did something unnecessarily reckless and harmful. He figured this was going to happen. The kid hadn't shown anything even close to the power he displayed at the entrance exam, and for good reason. The kid was lucky that the only thing close to him was the zero-pointer, or there would have been lawsuits. It was clear and logical that he hadn't done anything close to that at any point in his past, but it seemed that his actions at the exam had made him more willing to use that kind of firepower. Shortly after, Shota's suspicions were confirmed as he had to shield his eyes from the blinding light and billowing winds originating from the boy. As the smell of ozone started to fill the air and crackles of electricity generated from the swirling plasma intensified, he flared up his own quirk, bringing back the silence. Shota already had his "Do you want to render yourself useless on the field" speech prepared as he walked up to the problem child. Yes, Midoriya was definitely this year's problem child, all capitals included. What he hadn't expected, though, was for Midoriya to physically react to erasure, looking back to the crowd of students with a panicked expression before hunching over, clutching his stomach. Shota halted in surprise before worriedly picking up his pace to make sure the problem child was okay. He finally reached him and was about to ask him how he was feeling when Izuku yelped in pain and "Boo! Yee!" Oh gosh, it felt like all the sparkling water Izuku had drunk in his entire life came back to haunt him all at once. It was like his stomach had become the world's biggest party balloon, and he forgot to tie the knot after inflating it all the way. Trying to come up with more weird analogies, Izuku blinked as two boots suddenly entered his vision, and he looked up to see his homeroom teacher. Was that a worried look? Staring down at him. Uurp. The merciless torrent of gas ceased, and Izuku realized that he had just burped directly into his homeroom teacher's face, said teacher's shaggy hair settling back down from being blown back by the gas. "Oh no dash burp son dash burp, say, I'm so sore dash burp." The source of his current torment returned with a vengeance, and Izuku immediately looked away from his teacher's face, instead looking at the faces of his classmates, who were standing further back. Ida and Aoyama both looked horrified at the lack of decorum, and Ida especially seemed like he was holding back a lecture. Kaminari-kun and a black-haired teen with funky elbows were snickering, faces ripening from trying to hold in their laughter. Meanwhile, Kakin had abandoned all pretense and was rolling on the floor, cackling loudly. Well, I guess that was an impression all right. Guys dash burp, this isn't dash burp, funny. BURRP. With one final, magnificent burp, Izuku's stomach finally settled back down. Izuku looked back at his teacher to tell him he was fine and could continue when the coldness in his stomach spread throughout his entire body and a wave of tiredness washed over him. Izuku was unconscious before he hit the ground. Oh, this was definitely a solid 2 out of 10 day for Shota. First, he decided to show some worry for the problem child, who then proceeded to show his thanks by burping directly into his face for a solid 3 seconds, before having to get worried again as the kid promptly fell unconscious. Shota sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. "All Might, how about you actually make yourself useful and transport Midoriya here to the nurse's office instead of gawking like a civilian. All Might, who had been peeking around the corner of the gym building like a nervous schoolgirl waiting to ask out her crush, startled, but quickly recovered and leapt to the middle of the field with his booming laugh. I am here to bring Midoriya Shonen to Recovery Girl. And before any of the students could react, All Might ran off with the problem child in his hands, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Uraraka was the first shaken out of the class's collective stupor. Wait, All Might was watching us. And oh god, Shota definitely had to plan out some situational awareness exercises, didn't he? Who misses a blonde wall of solid muscle staring right at you? Shota decided to empty another juice box as the other teens started shouting before activating his quirk again. Silence. You lot really aren't very rational, are you? We'll pause the ball throw for now. Get started on the seated toe touch and sit-ups first, and have your partner write down the results. Then go do the long-distance run. I'll be going away to check up on Midoriya in the nurse's office, but don't try anything funny. There are cameras all over campus. And with his duties fulfilled, he left the rest of the class behind and strolled to the nurse's office. Annoyingly, Recovery Girl's office was pretty far from the P grounds, so the walk took a while. Shota eventually arrived and opened the door, spotting Recovery Girl looking over some scans before she noticed him and walked over. Ah, there you are, dearie. All Might just came by to deliver Midoriya. I've put him on the bed next to the window over there. The woman's grandmotherly demeanor evaporated. I thought I told you to be more careful when flashing around that quirk of yours. What were you thinking? Her face eventually settled on disappointed parent. Oh well, now's not the time. It looks like he's about to wake up. Recovery Girl motioned to a bed on the opposite side of the room where the problem child was trying and failing to sit upright before giving up and slumping against the backside of the bed. Shota walked over to greet him, but was surprised when the problem child blinked a few times and gave him a half-lidded stare before talking in a slurred, drawling voice. Oh Aizawa-sensei, why am I here? Shota raised an eyebrow. Problem child, you collapsed on the field after I erased your quirk with mine. How are you feeling? Midoriya giggled in response. It was surprisingly cute. I feel like I'm on low battery mode or something. Shota groaned. Problem child, do you have any idea why this happened? Do you even understand me right now? Midoriya seemed to ignore the question and continued staring at him. Hey, Zawa-sensei, did anyone ever tell you that you have a big snake friendo around your neck? The gremlin giggled again, and Shota turned around to address the other occupant in the room, branding the problem child a lost cause for now. Recovery Girl, do you have anything to say about this situation? She adopted a thoughtful look. I checked his medical record, and he has a clean bill of health. Though I did a quick scan and found a weird rupture on some tissue that was covering the entrance of the stomach, but that healed up nicely after I used my quirk on him. He seems to be extremely tired out, even after that nap he took. Last time during the entrance exam, he quickly bounced back after waking up, but he doesn't seem to be showing any signs of that now. What a mood. I guess I'll call the emergency contact on his file and see if we can get some answers from them. Shota replies as he took out his phone. After Izuku had left for his first day at UA, Inko decided to spend the time going through all the stuff related to Hisashi that she had stored away in the safe in the back of her closet. She'd been staring at the picture of her baby's first Halloween after his quirk manifestation, with Hisashi making a ridiculous pose in the background with that cheap cape, when her phone went off, snapping her out of her reminiscence. She fumbled with the device before accepting the call. Good afternoon. This is Inko Midoriya speaking. A gruff voice came out of the speaker. Are you Izuku Midoriya's mother? Yeah, that's me. Is something wrong? Inko squashed any worries at her baby getting hurt or kidnapped in the halls. That depends. The voice answered. My name is Shota Aizawa, Pro Hero Eraserhead, and I'm your son's homeroom teacher. Earlier today, your son tried to do something reckless during a quirk assessment test, so I temporarily erased his quirk before he could. He then proceeded to air his stomach's contents into my face for several seconds before promptly passing out and has woken up acting like a drunkard. It took Inko a few seconds to process all that information before frantically responding. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. That doesn't sound like something he'd ever do on purpose. You said you erased his quirk, right? That might be a problem. The voice grunted. I figured, based on his reaction and current state. But why exactly? His quirk registry file states it's an extreme heat/energy generation quirk with a minor manipulation aspect. Inko nervously started fiddling with the hem of her cardigan. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. You see, my son's quirk turns his stomach into an, fusion reactor. Shota thought his day couldn't get any weirder. But here he was, realizing he hadn't actually responded to Midoriya-san's statement in the past few seconds. His stomach is a what now? The woman at least had the decency to react sheepishly. I suppose you didn't check the full file. A few years back, my son received some unwanted attention due to his quirk, so I asked the registry to classify that information for his safety. Midoriya-san went silent for a bit, probably finding her words, and resumed talking. Most of his quirk is entirely physical, but the actual fusion happens because hydrogen is being pushed together by the quirk. I guess if that effect disappeared, then the hydrogen would expand and try to leave. There probably wasn't enough left to restart the fusion when you stopped erasing his quirk. Back when his quirk manifested, his whole metabolism stopped, but he didn't have enough hydrogen to get any fusion going. Drinking a lot of water kickstarted it, so as long as you do that, it should be fine. Shota side-eyed Midoriya, who was now asking if Recovery Girl was a dwarf from a fantasy book, before focusing on the phone call again. Thank you for the information, Midoriya-san. I'll get back to you when everything's done. Shota was about to address Recovery Girl and hang up on Midoriya-san when, what? Please. He shielded his ears, trying not to make his headache any worse from the ringing, when the woman continued. Oh my god. I'm so sorry for shouting at you, but, you should have him in an isolated place when his quirk ignites again. It might be pretty dangerous. You know, with the heat and all. Yeah, sorry, I'll hang up now. A beeping sound indicated that Midoriya-san had hung up. I should include aspirins in my outfit from now on if today is a good indication for how the rest of the year is gonna go. Izuku blinked as he came back to consciousness, which was kinda weird now that he thought about it. He didn't get sleep anymore once his quirk came in. The closest he could really get to sleep was getting knocked out or going into a meditative state for a while, which he started practicing after he realized that his mom was barely getting any rest with him being awake at home all the time. Though those were always dreamless sleeps, so it was kinda weird that he could distinctly remember dreaming this time. It was a pretty weird one too, sudden involuntary burping in front of his classmates and homeroom teacher, and then going on a magical journey with said teacher and a dwarf to drink an entire lake until he eventually exploded. Where am I anyway? This room looks like it came straight from an asylum. Oh gosh, I'm not locked up in here, am I? I swear I'm not a crazy person. Oh, the door just opened. Izuku stopped his train of thought when Aizawa-sensei appeared in the doorframe and assessed him with a critical gaze. Good to see that you're back to your senses, Midoriya. I'd rather you not call Recovery Girl a dwarf the next time you see her. Oh no, that dream was real. Aizawa-sensei didn't seem to notice or care about Izuku's mental freakout and continued talking. In case you didn't realize, I erased your quirk during the quirk assessment test, which needlessly endangered you. For that I must apologize. I had only done the surface-level research for all my students and thus missed critical information, which is fully my fault and goes against my responsibility as your homeroom teacher. Izuku waved his arms in front of him. It's all right, sensei. I was kinda asking for it with that move of mine. Oh gosh, I really did burp in your face, didn't I? I'm so sorry, sensei. Izuku kept the frantic screaming inside his head. The man put up his hand. Problem child, just stop. You're giving me a headache. Just go pick up your stuff in the classroom. The test finished a while ago, but I think there were some people waiting for you. Izuku swallowed. But I didn't complete 4 of the 8 tests. I'm probably last. Does that mean I'm expelled? Aizawa-sensei looked back incredulously. You're worried about the expelling. That was just a ruse to motivate you all. Nobody's expelled, problem child. Now go to your classroom. I think I'll take a nap in this padded room right now. Izuku stood up as Aizawa-sensei returned to his yellow cocoon and lied down. Right, sensei? At least the way back to Class 1A was a lot easier to do now that he knew where it was. The Kaminari-kun-shaped indentation on the wall was a great landmark. As Izuku entered the classroom, he was surprised at the amount of people still present, despite school having ended early for the first day. The stoic teen was still sitting in the back, scrolling on his phone. Ida was watching the remaining students in the corner like he was the CCTV, and Kakin, Kaminari-kun, and Perma Blush Girl were in a conversation. Well, the latter two were having a conversation and were pretending that Kakin was participating. Izuku walked closer to them and listened in on the conversation. Damn it, Roundface, I'm not here to waste my time with small talk with you and Pikachu over here. Once Izuku gets back, I'm bailing. Izuku smirked and snuck up on Kakin. Oh wow, Kakin, already made 2 new friends? That's 3 times as many as in middle school. I'm so proud of you. Izuku automatically stepped back as Kakin startled and turned around. Oi, shut the fuck up, Zuku. Not like you had any other friends back there either. At least you realized those extras were just trying to fucking suck up to your shitty ass. Could have tried harder to get rid of them though. Izuku put on a disappointed face. Kakin, you know I'm not part Pomeranian like you. I can't bark away everyone that comes near me. Kakin grimaced. Damn it, you little shit. You might fool everyone around here with your sunshine act, but I know you're a smug, sassy shithead when you want to be. Izuku laughed as Kakin raged on, but stopped when something was pushed against his lips. Ah, cheese. What? He looked to his side to see that Aoyama had somehow manifested next to him with a plate full of different cheeses on it. Monsieur Midoriya, it's good to see you again. I forgot we didn't have lunch today. I brought all this delicious fromage too. Would you like some? Izuku awkwardly backed away from the cheese pressed against his mouth. Ah, no. Sorry, I don't eat. Aoyama looked disappointed and walked to another group as the girl Kakin called Roundface piped up. Oh, are you lactose intolerant? He awkwardly started rubbing the back of his neck. Actually, I don't eat at all. I only drink water actually. Don't worry, it's just part of Dash. Izuku instinctively ducked and avoided an aggressive hand chop from Ida, who came up from behind. Midoriya-san, not eating your daily calories and vitamins is irresponsibly unhealthy of you. As UA students, we should act as role models and look after our physical health to the best of our ability. The stoic teen at the back of the room looked up from his phone. Midoriya, are you one of those breatharians I've read about online? I wanted to try it myself, but I could never find any practitioners anywhere off the web. Would you mind answering some questions for me? Izuku backed up even further. Wait, please, no, you're all misunderstanding. It's just part of my quirk. I wish I could eat food, but I just barf it right back up if I try. I actually do still ingest vitamins, which is why I occasionally drink vitamin water, but they don't actually go through my stomach. Roundface chimed in again. Oh, so you really can't eat any food? Oh man, that would suck if I couldn't taste mochi again. Kaminari-kun finally decided to stop listening and entered the conversation. Whoa, Midoriya. Dude, speaking of your quirk though, what was up with that insane burp, man? That's gotta be a world record or something. And right into the teacher's face too. What a riot. I really wish I had my phone with me back then. A teen with spiked, bright red hair walked right past them and to the door mumbling. Burping into someone's face isn't very manly though, before exiting the room with the pink-skinned classmate. I can't believe Hobo-sensei fucking cock-blocked you like that, Zuku. That shit looked like it was gonna be fucking awesome. Kakin yelled. I guess I'll settle with you finally, sticking it up to authority. Izuku flashed a sheepish grin. Guys, can we just let that rest? I don't want to be reminded of that right now. Besides, Aizawa-sensei made the right call. I wasn't thinking about potential collateral damage, and I would have been exhausted afterwards from spending all my energy anyway. Kakin huffed at that and flashed a thumbs down. Boo, stop being a lame-ass nerd, Zuku. I thought I got you to man up already. Izuku shrugged and grabbed a bottle of water from his backpack. Yeah, and I decided to use it solely to annoy you. So I guess that backfired for you, Kakin. Kakin scowled and responded with some explosions in playful anger. I swear to fucking God, Zuku, I'll dash, but was interrupted by a piasichichichi from Izuku opening the fresh bottle of sparkling water. Don't push me, you little shit. Shortly after, Izuku found himself running away from the classroom while being chased by a feral Pomeranian, trying and failing to chug the sparkling water while cackling. As they approached the entrance gate, he looked over his shoulder and yeeted the now empty bottle directly into Kaken's face. Izuku, I'm gonna fucking kill you. As he sprinted all the way to the subway station, Uncle Masaru only agreed to drive them to UA. He reminisced about his first day at UA. While that definitely was quite a memorable day, despite that one embarrassment, it was pretty fun overall though. Hopefully that was the most eventful day for a long time. Right? Izuku's current moveset. Passive abilities. Fusion. Powerful gravity manipulation that fuses hydrogen atoms isolated from water together. Photosynthesis. The organelles absorb the fusion's radiation and also incoming sunlight. However, in normal circumstances, sunlight is insignificant compared to the energy produced by the fusion. Increased healing factor. Stored energy speeds up all cellular growth, requires stored energy. Infinite stamina. Offshoot of increased healing factor. Constant muscle healing, as well as a near-limitless source of ADP when energy isn't actively being used, grants insane stamina. Sleepless. Offshoot of increased healing factor. Somehow negates the normal issues of being awake 24/7. Basic moves. Solar Aura. Directly uses energy from the fusion core, bypassing the stored energy, to emit light and heat up the air near and within the magnetic field. Feels warm and comforting to the touch. Requires constant upkeep from the core without the use of stored energy. Special moves. Pulsar. Izuku rapidly brightens his solar aura using stored energy, blinding and stunning opponents before dimming it again. Uses up a low amount of stored energy. Can be used in rapid succession for further confusion. Solar Flare. Izuku concentrates his solar aura over time in one spot before suddenly releasing it with the help of stored energy, causing the contained plasma to shoot out in a quick burst. Concentrating for longer will result in higher power bursts. Izuku mainly identifies 3 distinct levels of power. Low power. Plasma fizzles out almost immediately, C-class. Medium power. Plasma stays long enough to burn someone, M-class. And high power. Most plasma stays. Upon impact, the imploding plasma generates a limited EMP, X-class. Like most moves, he was inspired by real-life astronomy terms. Uses up low to high amounts of stored energy, depending on the class. Super moves. Solar Storm. Izuku rapidly speeds up his heartbeat to an insane rate using internal energy, which allows for the magnetic field to spread up to a radius of 15 meters, within which Izuku can control the currents of heat/plasma. This move uses up a medium amount of stored energy, but Izuku risks getting a heart attack if kept up for too long. Ultimate moves. These moves are designed to end a fight immediately, as it uses up all stored energy and renders Izuku unconscious. Supernova. Izuku channels all of his stored energy throughout his entire body and expels it in one go, creating an immensely powerful, medium-range melee attack. Izuku groaned and slammed his head on his desk, immediately regretting it and trying to catch the bottle of sparkling water that was about to fall off. I guess that first day set my expectations of UA too high, just like how I set the others' expectations of me too high at the entrance exam. Now don't get him wrong, he didn't mind the coursework. Really, he didn't. But his quirk made regular classroom lessons like this unbearable. He might have been able to stop being physically hyperactive when he had to sit still through focusing it all inwards, but then he just became mentally hyperactive instead. At home, this wasn't too bad. The jumping train of thought allowed him to go in-depth on all coursework during his nightly studying sessions, switching between subjects easily, which is what he used most of his extra free time his quirk granted him on when he wasn't meditating. It allowed for him to keep his grades up quite easily, despite the disadvantages his quirk brought. When he was in a classroom, however, forced to follow a teacher, his hyperactive mind was more a curse than a blessing, making him think of or focus on the most unrelated things and blocking him from paying attention to the teacher and their lesson. A quick glance to his right confirmed that Kaminari-kun was experiencing the same problem. I doubt Kaminari-kun has the same luxuries I have. Maybe we can do some study sessions together. Oh man, I still didn't ask him if that black lightning bolt has died or not. That can wait until lunch. All right, it's almost lunchtime. Only 2 minutes have passed though. Man, For such an interesting appearance, Ectoplasm Sensei sure talks in a really boring way. I wonder how he can talk without any lips though. I still can't figure it out. Wait, is he staring at me? Oh gosh, how long have I been staring at him? Zone back. Zone back. Daria, are you actually listening to me? Izuku would say that Ectoplasm Sensei sounded annoyed, but with his mask covering all of his facial expressions it was difficult to say for certain. He grinned sheepishly and rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry Sensei, I was a bit lost in thought there. What was the question? Ectoplasm Sensei gestured to an equation on the board. I was asking you if you could solve this equation, but if you weren't really paying attention, I'll just ask someone else to give it a try. While Ectoplasm Sensei was saying that, Izuku looked at the equation in question. Luckily, it was something he had come across during his nightly studying sessions during the break, so he was able to give an answer before Ectoplasm Sensei could pick out someone else. Using Lapidoless rule, you get an answer of 2, Sensei. Ectoplasm Sensei looked surprised but pleased from Izuku's quick answer, and Izuku noticed Kaminari-kun looking at him with newfound respect and a hint of jealousy from the corner of his eyes. As Ectoplasm Sensei continued his lesson, Kakin turned around and smacked Izuku on the head. Damn it, nerd, showing off already? You're gonna make all the extras here jealous of you before the end of the first week. Izuku grinned back at him. Oh, you still calling me a nerd, Mr. Top Grades at Aldera Junior High? Before Kakin could smack him a second time, the bell finally went off, signaling the start of lunch. Most of the class was already rushing to the door and got stopped because someone was obstructing it. A very recognizable, gruffy voice spoke up from the hallway. Not so fast, class. Before you hellions go terrorize lunch rush, I have one short announcement to make. Instead of the classroom, you'll be meeting up with me at the entrance of the support department after lunch. That's all. And with that, Aizawa-sensei walked off again, presumably to the teacher's lounge, muttering about a coffee machine still being broken. Aizawa-sensei's peculiar announcement was quickly forgotten by Izuku once he, Kakin, Kaminari-kun, and Roundface sat down at an unoccupied table in the cafeteria. Oh my gosh, Kakin, did you see that? Lunch Rush wrote his signature on my food and ketchup. How am I going to preserve this? I should have just given him one of my pens. Stupid. Maybe I can still dash. Zuku, snap out of it and shut up. Those extras are giving us weird fucking looks. Kakin cut him off with a smack. Izuku blushed and quieted down at that. Kaminari-kun spoke up to fill the awkward silence. So, what exactly are you two to each other? 'Cause at first you two seemed like rivals or something, but now you act more like a married couple. Like, is it just me seeing this or dash? Kakin sneered at that. EW, what the fuck, Pikachu? No way are me and Zuku anything like that. You know what? I'm demoting you to Piku just for that stupid-ass comment. Piku looked a bit hurt by that, but the moment passed before it was really noticeable, and he went into comedic mode. No, how could you do this to me? He wailed with an exaggerated swoon. I don't deserve this treatment. Uraraka dash. Oh, so that's Roundface's name. At least I don't have to ask her now. Thanks, Kaminari-kun. Back me up here. Uraraka just responded with a smug look that seemed identical to Kakin's. You reap what you sow, Kaminari-kun. She then took a big bite from her mochi and started addressing Izuku and Kakin with her mouth full. Now that I think about it though, you two seem very familiar with each other. Did you go to the same middle school? Kakin leaned back and crossed his arms. Not just middle school, Roundface. We've known each other for as long as I can remember. And since nobody else at school had a quirk that was anywhere near as cool as mine and Zuku's, we just kept to ourselves. No need to get those extras sucking up to us. Uraraka finished her bite of mochi. So are you two more like brothers from other mothers then? Kakin huffed at that, and Izuku flushed at the observation. Yeah, I guess you could say that, Uraraka-san. Kaminari-kun piped back up for the first time since his nickname demotion. You know, I expected that kind of cuteness from Midoriya, but definitely not from you, Bakugo. I get the feeling you're actually just a big softy under that spiky hair. All bark, but no bite, you know? Kakin nearly exploded the remainder of the spicy curry Annie Mitsuki had packed for him. Who the fuck you calling soft, huh? I'll fucking show you bite, Piku. But his attempted assault with his lunch tray was interrupted by the bell, Kaminari-kun swiftly getting up and running away. After realizing that they had no idea where the support department was located, Kakin swooped in like the GPS he was and found the right way. Despite his effort, their group was the last to arrive at the main hall of the support department tower of UA. Aizawa-sensei, judgmentally, standing in front of them while waiting before speaking up. Silence. I'll forgive you for arriving late at new locations in the first week, but I will start punishing latecomers after that. I do not tolerate illogical time wastes, so I expect all of you to come on time once the week is over. Ida's hand rose from the crowd of students. Aizawa-sensei, what are we doing here at the support department when we're supposed to be having foundational heroics? If there's been an unexpected schedule change, I find it most unprofessional that our online timetables didn't change to reflect that. An unamused glare from Aizawa-sensei quieted Ida down. It would serve you well to not interrupt your teachers until we say so. As for why we're here, it's become tradition in recent years to meet up with the support department and get accustomed to your hero suits, which is what this first foundational heroics class is for. Izuku piped up at that and spoke before his mind caught up. Oh, it's just like what Endeavor said in his older press conferences. Every hero worth their salt has an equally good team behind them, and the support technicians are the most important of those for a hero's success. Midoriya is right. Dash, a voice came from behind Aizawa-sensei. A man with an excavator over his head, pro-hero powerloader, walked up to the group. Which is why it's important to create relationships between hero and support students early on and maintain them. Here at UA, we call it the Hero Support Buddy System. Aizawa-sensei side-eyed powerloader as he came to a standstill next to him and took over. After the admittances were sorted out, we showed the first-year support students brief descriptions and clips of your quirks from the entrance exam. We assigned one support student per hero student based on what quirk each support student thought they could work with best. Aizawa-sensei turned around and motioned for the class to follow him towards the nearby blast doors. When you sent in the designs and descriptions of your hero suits, we had your assigned support student come up with suitable blueprints as extra credit. They had free rein to add, change, or remove what they wanted over spring break. But Powerloader had the final say in approval and changes, and actual support companies made the suits from those blueprints. If your assigned partner didn't get a blueprint approved, then the support company made it themselves, based on your own specifications. None of this is required or permanent. So if you or your assigned partner aren't content with one another, then you can file a request for changing partners once the final term exams come around. Of course, it's always possible that no other student is willing to partner with you, which will leave you partnerless. Aizawa came to a standstill and started facing the class again. These are the first-year support department studios for classes 1F, 1G, and 1H. I'll announce who of you goes to which class. When your name is called, you can walk over there. Your assigned support student already knows what you look like, so they'll approach you first. You have about 20 minutes to get to know them and the suit they helped design for you. After that, we'll be gathering at Gym Gamma to test them out. Don't waste my time any further. I haven't had any coffee at UA in almost 2 days now. Because of his seat number, Izuku was one of the last to enter his assigned support studio, 1H. The room was a lot larger than he'd expected, with one main studio with big, complicated-looking machines populating the space, and multiple smaller rooms sitting adjacent to the main room, where Izuku could see some of his classmates talking to what he assumed were the support students. Nobody approached him, though, so Izuku nervously walked towards the end of the main studio, the smaller office adjacent to which looked pitch black with the edges of the doorframe being more charred than the others. Izuku carefully peeked his head through the open door and into the dark space. Is anyone in here? Hello? Despite the room probably being unoccupied, the lights being off and all, Izuku couldn't help but feel like he was in the crosshairs of some dangerous, apex predator. It was right as Izuku decided to turn back around and ask Aizawa-sensei for help that said crosshairs manifested in the darkness and shoved themselves into Izuku's face. Hi there, Zero-Pointer Koen. Sorry for the lights. I think I blew all of them up testing one of my babies. You look a bit unsteady there compared to your entrance exam tapes. What's up with that? Izuku slowly backed off while the girl with pink dreadlocks kept talking before shaking himself out of his stupor. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Are you my assigned partner? The girl looked at him, and her amber eyes settled on his face, crosshairs dilating and contracting like she was assessing him down to the details. In the end, she gave a bright smile, the crazed look in her eyes not diminishing in the slightest. "Yup, that's me, May Hatsum. Don't bother telling me your name. I have more useful things to remember." Hatsum swirled around and walked back into the darkness of her space. "Anyway, you're lucky I'm around at UA, cause all those cowards dash." She raised her voice with that word and looked back over her shoulder in the general direction of the other support students. "Got scared off when they saw that amazing feat of yours. But I saw the potential." If her eyes didn't already have crosshairs on them, Izuku thought they might have turned into hearts at that statement. Hatsum looked forward again. "I mean, with that kind of firepower, you can easily become the next endeavor in terms of strength, and I'm going to be the famous support technician that gets you up there." Her shoulders slumped a bit. "This is where I tell you who my idol is, but Endeavor's personal support technician is a complete mystery, even though they basically popularized the whole buddy system. A shame. I'd have loved to pick their brain over how they came up with the material in Endeavor's hero costumes. Any Quirk pro would be a fool not to get their costume materials from Endeavor's support company." She arrived at what Izuku thought was a mannequin and turned back to him. "Anyway, you're basically a light yourself, right, Zero-Pointer Coin? So light up this room for me. I don't think Powerloader Sensei is going to fix these lights anytime soon after the last 2 times." Izuku was still a bit overwhelmed by his support partner, but silently obliged. Somehow, the manic look in her eyes brightened even further along with the room. "Ah, thank you, Zero-Pointer Coin. That's much better. Anyway, now that we have some light back in here dash." Hatsum was suddenly standing right in front of Izuku and feeling him out. Yes, that aura is quite comfortable. That will be useful when calming those civilians down. Oh man, those measurements I got from Powerloader Sensei really were right. You're packing a lot of muscle under that uniform, Zero-Pointer Coin." Despite Kaken's lifelong attempts at toughening him up, Izuku was still absolutely terrible at interacting with girls, especially if they got into his personal space. Trying to end the uncomfortableness, Izuku stepped back a bit and spoke up. Hatsum-san dash. Call me May. Hatsum is my dad, Zero-Pointer Coin." "Alright, May-san. Close enough. We're here for my costume, right? I think we're running out of time." Hatsum's eyes widened. That's right, your costume. It's right over here." Hatsum pointed at the now visible mannequin. "How about you put that on while I tell you the specs of our baby?" Did she just call it our baby? The original awkwardness coming from Izuku quickly faded as he put on the costume. Hatsum was still talking in the background, but he was already completely focused on the costume itself, looking at it through the nearby mirror. The main body was mostly as he had originally drawn it. A simple, comfortable jumpsuit that had a similar but slightly darker green color than his hair, with golden yellow stripes going along the sides and accentuating his sleeves, neck, and belt, forming a simplistic pattern at the sides of his abdomen. His bright red high tops and utility belt complemented the golden yellow. Izuku put on his dark gray knee and elbow pads as he realized Hatsum hadn't stopped talking once, and he zoned back in. "And I guess you haven't really been listening to me for a while, but I know how you feel. You want to test this baby out right now, of course, which is why I left the important bits for right now. You back, Zero-Pointer Coin." Shocked at being predicted so easily, Izuku could only nod in response. "Perfect. Alright, so first things first, after reading the full file, your quirk is actually a lot easier to work with than I expected. Since all of your plasma forms from the heated air around you, I didn't have to work in any ports or vents or anything like that, just a material that's very heat resistant. Plus, since you don't seem to have any overheating problems, I had a lot of space left on your suit since I don't need to add any cooling systems. You might have noticed that the back of your jumpsuit is a bit thicker than the rest. Well, that's because I put in a water cooling system. Not for cooling you. No, it's all hooked up to this mouthguard over here." She rushed to the table next to her and picked up a gray, metallic mouthguard. This baby gathers water vapor on top of filtering the air and the cooling system, then condenses it into drinking water, which you can drink from this extendable straw embedded in the mouthguard. That way you don't have to carry around a load of useless water bottles, and you don't have to take off your mouthguard in the middle of a fight to drink. Izuku eyed the mouthguard again in wonder, starting to understand the manic tint to her eyes. Oh wow, that's amazing, Air Mason. I didn't even think of having to drink water mid-fight. Hatsum nodded excitedly, but was already moving on to the next point on her list. Anyway, those gold stripes aren't just for show. I've actually integrated a whole electric circuit in your costume, which you can control the direction of with that magnetic field of yours to mimic your whole helium plasma blood thingy. Should be able to reinforce and strengthen the field by quite a good amount. Izuku looked down at his suit and flexed his field, eyes widening as the stripes lit up slightly. I put extra detailed circuitry in these gloves since you seem to favor your hands. The field it generates should allow you to shape that plasma you make more efficiently than without him. Hatsum continued. As he put on the gloves, they made a soft humming sound as the gold lines accentuating his sleeves touched their insides. Izuku then realized he was missing something from his original design. Hatsum seemed to have anticipated that thought as well. Ah yes, that hood with the bunny ears. Honestly, it looked stupid. Hey, those aren't bunny ears, and All Might's hair isn't stupid. And why would you want to hide your face behind a weird-looking mask anyway? I always thought masks make heroes less approachable. But hey, I'm not going to go against your questionable design choices, 0-pointer Cohen. She grabbed the last pieces of equipment from her desk before he could object. Two thin, long, metallic objects with a thicker base, each with grooves on one edge. Instead, I got you these two. Go ahead, put him on already. They're earpieces, by the way. Izuku blankly took the earpieces from her, deciding that going with the manic flow was better than questioning it. As Izuku put the earpieces on, he realized he could distinguish the muted conversations of his classmates more easily. Honestly, I don't understand why earpieces aren't a standard part of a hero costume. Seems a bit dumb. Anyway, flare up that aura a bit more, 0-pointer Cohen. He obliged, and as the aura flared up more, he could hear two quick beeps from either side of his head. Izuku turned to the mirror he was standing in front of and gasped when he saw two tendrils of his aura spiking outward and back from his ears. Oh, so that's what she meant with not going against my choices. Man, besides her personality, I'm actually pretty lucky to have her, and maybe I'm the only one here who could handle her. Hatsum interrupted his staring session. Hey, time's almost up. Luckily, there's only one thing left. So, 0-pointer Cohen, I saw you squinting a lot during the entrance exam. Do your eyes not have some protective layer to shield you from bright lights? Izuku scratched behind his ear, a bit embarrassed at having that embarrassing limitation mentioned out loud. No, they don't. Why dash? The manic glint increased a bit more. I was right. Well, then you'll be happy to know that I got just the baby for you. Put that mouthguard on so it's touching those earpieces on the side, and then click the small button hidden on the left. Izuku obliged and produced an embarrassing yelp when green-tinted glass slid up out of the mouthguard and right in front of him, giving his sight a slightly green hue. He noticed that the glass was actually secured to the grooves of the earpieces now and was only loosely attached to the mouthguard, so he lowered the ladder again. Hatsum grinned in satisfaction and gave an appraising look. See, 0-pointer Cohen? This visor baby can have its brightness filter adjusted at will. Plus, the earpieces have little projectors, so if you want to play Iron Man, that's totally possible. She chuckled at her own joke. Hatsum looked over Izuku's shoulder, and the chuckle turned nervous. 0-pointer Cohen, I think it's time we head to the gym. Powerloader Sensei is looking at me like when I exploded baby number 35. 35. It's only the first full day? I thought I was the one with unlimited stamina. Thankfully, Hatsum's costume showcase hadn't gone too far over time, and they quickly caught up with the rest of Izuku's class at Gym Gamma. Izuku took stock of all the hero costumes present, trying not to fanboy over them, and saw Kaken sulking in the corner, who noticed Izuku as he walked up to him. Oi Izuku, nice costume. Thank fuck your partner got rid of that stupid fucking hood. Izuku wanted to object again, but instead observed his friend's outfit, which looked mostly like how he had meticulously designed it in their childhood, except, Kaken, what happened to your gloves? Kaken scoffed and looked at his grenade-less, dark green gloves, which now went just past his elbows, meeting up with the sleeves of a long-sleeved version of his original tank top design. The nerd they assigned to me pussied out and removed caused their overkill for most villains, and it's too bulky. Like I don't know what I'm doing with my own fucking quirk. He scoffed. Izuku pitied whoever was assigned to Kakin, but noticed something else. Hey, so why are they this long then? Kakin smiled a bit. To absorb recoil, since my shoulders aren't as built against my explosions as my arms. That nerd added something actually quite useful as well. These gloves still collect my sweat, but they transport it all the way to the soles of my boots through my costume, where the sweat can be detonated like with my hands. I basically have double the firepower now. 2 explosions went off under his boots, and he lifted off the ground for a second. Izuku stared at the feet in awe, before his brain caught up. Kakin, how'd they figure out how to detonate it down there if your quirk factor is fully focused around your hands? Kakin raised an eyebrow before smirking. Huh? Well, the nerd turned out to be a giant quirk nerd like you, and requested my old quirk counseling reports on a hunch. You know, now that I think about it, he actually kinda looked like you. Anyway, turns out my sweat isn't actually explosive at room temperature. And honestly, I've never even thought of the dangers if that had been true. Instead, it turns into its explosive form when it absorbs some specific high-energy radiation or some shit, which is what my hands emit when I want to explode stuff, like the safety on a gun, I guess. After that, all that's needed is a little bit of extra heat, and boom. Kakin flexed his quirk for emphasis. The nerd just replicated that in my boots, but activated when I flex my feet. Izuku brightened as he took in the explanation. Oh wow, that's amazing. I guess you'll have to change up your fighting style then, he pointed out. Kakin smirked. Ha, you bet. They better let us fight today. I'm itching for some good ol' ass-kicking. I can give you an ass-kicking right now if you don't quiet down and start listening to me. Both Izuku and Kakin startled when Aizawa-sensei's voice came from the crowd of students in front of the gym doors. Oh whoops, how long has Aizawa-sensei been here? Aizawa-sensei continued talking like he hadn't just threatened Kakin. As Bakugo said, we'll be doing simple quirk sparring for today's lesson. This is mainly to get you comfortable in your suits and to establish the basics of combat in a safe environment. Furthermore, your support partners will be observing from the side for any suit malfunctions, oversights, or further improvements. Kaminari-kun somehow raised his hand before Ida could. So, not to sound ungrateful or anything, teach, but I was kinda hoping All Might would be teaching us. He was watching us yesterday, and he's not teaching us any other courses. Or is he exclusively teaching the 3rd years or something? Man, that'd suck big time. Aizawa-sensei pinched his fingers and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Yes, Kaminari, All Might was supposed to be teaching this lesson today, but I gave myself the liberty to look into his lesson plans yesterday while trying to fix the coffee machine in the teacher's lounge, and after seeing some questionable decisions, I decided he needed to take some crash courses with Nizu first, which is why I've taken over this lesson. The teen with funky elbows spoke up next. No offense, man, but how are you going to supervise all of us sparring on your own? Right as he finished talking, a blonde blur came out of the doors of Gym Gamma, and a blue blur jumped down from the roof next to the entrance before the doors to Gym Gamma opened. Wait, the doors weren't open yet, revealing an elfish-looking older teen standing behind them. The 2 blurs turned out to be older teens as well, and Aizawa-sensei resumed talking as they gathered next to him. You're right, I can't safely supervise all you hellions on my own, which is why I asked these 3 for help. Aizawa-sensei gestured to them. They are also known as the Big 3. They will help supervise today since I trust them the most with their sparring skills. If that's all understood, I'm going to take a nap now, so you 3, take over the introduction. With that, Aizawa-sensei moved to a coffee machine standing near the entrance, cursing under his breath when the machine turned out to also be broken, before laying down on the floor in his sleeping bag. The buff blonde guy seemed about to speak up, but got interrupted when the girl with periwinkle hair jumped in front of him. Hey guys, my name's Nijire Hado, but call me Nijire, please. Oh man, I can't believe us 3rd years are allowed to do this. Look at you 1st years, so innocent and squishy. She suddenly bounded forward, right into Izuku's face, which he would have flinched from if Hatsum hadn't gotten him accustomed to that during the 20 minutes they talked. Hey, you're the guy that vaporized the 0-pointer, right? Did you do that before? Can you do that right now? Maybe I can help. My quirk shoots energy too. Can I help? Izuku wasn't able to respond before Hato had already moved on to one of his taller classmates. Hey, why's your head look like a rock? Does it have anything to do with your quirk? You seem pretty shy. I think you and Tamakiko and Dash, she gestured towards the elf boy, who promptly turned around to face the wall, would get along great. The blonde guy, who had been smiling the entire time, cut Hato off before Tamaki could bury himself into the wall. Nijire, Aizawa put his trust in us, so we should do what he asked. The serious smile turned into a pleased grin as he addressed the crowd. Anyway, as she said, the shy guy in the back is Tamaki Yamajiki. I'd ask you to call him Tamaki-senpai, but I think he'd implode if you did. And my name is Mirio Togata, hero named Lemillion, because I'm going to save 1,000,000 people. His smile somehow grew even prouder. Call me Mirio-senpai, though. I'm not a full hero yet. Kaminari-kun, who had been standing to Izuku's left, suddenly got a look of recognition on his face. Hey, you're that dude that tricked me into running headfirst into a wall yesterday. Mirio-senpai focused on him, but kept his smile up. I don't know what you mean. I was just taking the fastest way to class. Kaminari-kun huffed. All right, fine man. Wait a minute. Your classroom is 2 floors above ours. You were just waiting there to try and trick one of us first years. Hey, I can see that smug smile of yours. Mirio-senpai clapped his hands loudly, ignoring Kaminari-kun. All right, that's enough small talk. We're here to do some quirk sparring. But first, I'm sure some of you are thinking, hey, this guy seems kinda goofy, right? So here's what we're gonna do. Let's have a big fight. All you guys against me in this gym. He laughed loudly, the sound filling the gym. Kakin rose to the bait. Huh? You're on, you Tintin-looking fucker. Izuku's other classmates seemed to share the same thoughts, but Izuku recognized the look that Mirio-senpai was giving them. It was a look that he saw a lot on Kakin's face when he was about to steamroll their upperclassmen back at Aldera whenever they decided to try and gang up on him. Oh man, I better be careful. He seems totally sure of his chances. What did Kaminari-kun say about him again? That he went through a solid wall. Maybe his quirk is some kind of teleportation then. His hunch about the look seemed to be right, as only he and Kakin were left standing after Mirio-senpai had systematically taken down all of their classmates one by one with his POWWERR and unwavering smile. Well, except for the stoic teen, who simply shrugged and backed off to the wall. Kakin side-eyed Izuku with a feral grin on his face and went on to taunt his opponent. Saving the best for last, Tintin? At that, Kakin charged forward, arms facing backwards and setting off rapid-fire explosions, speeding him up even more. Mirio-senpai simply kept smiling and disappeared into the ground. Kakin suddenly moved his body lower down to the ground and moved his left arm in front of his chest, his palm facing off to the right as he set off explosions with both hands, changing his forward momentum into angular momentum while pivoting around his left leg, his right leg extended for a low kick. As that happened, Mirio-senpai's back appeared right in front of him, also being in a turn. He was probably expecting Kakin to be further ahead. Izuku could practically hear Kakin smirk as he set off a large explosion from his right foot, accelerating his leftward turn even more and swiping at Mirio-senpai's ankles with incredible speed. That quick bout of improvisation was apparently enough to catch Mirio-senpai off guard, as he lost his footing and starting falling sideways with a yelp. Kakin had already made a full turn with his angular momentum and made full use of Mirio-senpai's moment of surprise, firmly planting his right foot onto the floor and launching himself forwards again with explosions from his hands, aiming at Mirio-senpai's falling back for a full-body tackle and going right through his body. Kakin seemed to share Izuku's sentiments and tried to slow himself down with explosions, but failed and hit the nearby wall head-on. Oh yikes, dude. Izuku turned around to see that Kaminari-kun was already sitting up again from when he was taken down, massaging his belly. I feel your pain, Bakugo. Kakin collapsed onto the floor and just groaned as Mirio-senpai stood up and turned around to look at Izuku. Well then, Kohai, I've been wanting to meet you ever since I heard about what you did during the entrance exams. Somewhere during that sentence, Izuku zoned out again, mentally panicking. His quirk is some kind of phasing? I thought it was delayed surface warping or something. I couldn't see him take down the others clearly enough. Calm down, Izuku. Kakin figured something out since he predicted Mirio-senpai's reemergence just now. But how could you predict something like teleporting? Unless it's not teleporting at all. It must be related to the phasing then. Wait, where'd Mirio-senpai go? He was standing right in front of me before. Oh no, I totally zoned out just now. Did he phase underground then? Oh crap, that means he's probably about to attack me. Izuku felt something shift somewhere below the ground left of him and instinctively flared up his aura. Mirio-senpai suddenly ejected from that spot, and Izuku tried to slap away the incoming fist on reflex. Apparently Mirio-senpai didn't expect Izuku to be paying attention as the slap hit his wrist, and his smile wavered. Izuku took the moment to jump backwards and take stock of the situation. Mirio-senpai was standing a few meters away from him, touching his wrist with a contemplative look on his face, but not charging at him yet. Not wasting any time, Izuku ran towards him and charged up several low-power flares from his fingers, strong enough to create concussive blasts of air, but not enough for any significant amount of plasma to get ejected. Mirio-senpai responded by falling through the ground again. Not taking his chances, Izuku tried something he'd been thinking of ever since the ball throw yesterday. He pulled out a large chunk of his stored energy and pulled the energy torrents into the soles of his feet as he jumped, the billowing winds he remembered from yesterday pushing him into the air even further. Izuku looked down to see Mirio-senpai shooting out off where Izuku had just been standing, having enough speed to reach Izuku in the air. Crap, I can't let him get close to me. I don't have enough maneuverability in the air to defend myself. He might not have a strength-enhancing quirk, but those muscles aren't for show if the way my classmates were knocked down after one punch was any indication. Adjusting to the situation, Izuku took all the excess energy in his feet and moved it to his heart, which started rapidly speeding up its beating. He could see Mirio-senpai's smile twitching as he no doubt felt Izuku's magnetic field spreading throughout the room and saw the gold lines on his costume light up brightly. I only have one shot at this before my heart gets overworked. He must have limited maneuverability in the air as well. Super move, Solar Storm. Izuku pulled out more energy, several streams of plasma flowing away from his body and shaped by his magnetic field, quickly approaching Mirio-senpai from several angles, who phased right through them. Right, dang it. Why is his quirk so cool? Both combatants landed on the ground again, and Izuku was forced to disperse his energy from his heart, panting from the exhaustion. Mirio-senpai used that opportunity to get in close to Izuku and spoke for the first time since starting the match. You have super moves already, huh, Kohai? I'll show you one of mine then. Super move, Blinder Touch Eyeball Crush. Izuku knew a feint when he saw one, especially since Mirio-senpai's right arm was already cocked up for a punch, so he moved his arms to shield his belly, but he couldn't help closing his eyes on reflex as Mirio-senpai's left hand was moving towards his face. Good thing he did so too, as, ARGH, what the heck? You just poked me in the eye. Mirio-senpai seemed surprised as well as no hit to the stomach came, allowing Izuku to fall on the ground, pressing his hands up to his right eye. Izuku still hadn't opened his eyes yet, but turned his head towards where he remembered Aizawa-sensei sleeping. Sensei, is that allowed? Apparently, Aizawa-sensei wasn't feigning sleep anymore, as his voice sounded much closer. In spars like this it isn't, problem child. Togata, explain what happened now. Izuku was finally able to open his eyes again and saw Mirio-senpai giving a sheepish, slightly confused smile. Honestly, Aizawa, I have no idea. I was sure my left arm was permeable when I did that. It even went through Midoriya Kohai's visor. Aizawa-sensei grunted at that. Whatever, this illogical demonstration has gone on long enough. Finish it up, Togata. Mirio-senpai's normal smile returned, and he addressed the class with a laugh. Well, I hope that convinced you guys that I know how to deliver a good fight. Anyway, Aizawa should probably dash. Kaminari-kun spoke up. Hey, hold on a minute. What the heck's up with your quirk? First nobody except Midoriya and Bakugo could even hit you, and then you also started glitching all over the place like we're in one of those pre-quirk Bethesda games. I call hacks. Mirio-senpai's face lit up in amusement as he laughed again. You're funny, Kohai, but none of that was a hack. Actually, I think both Midoriya Kohai and the Pomeranian, Bakugo was it, figured it out. Kakin sked at the overdone jab, but replied, "Yeah, you phase through shit, right, Tintin?" Mirio-senpai's grin brightened. "That's right, but Kugo Kohai. If I unphase while I'm in something else, then I get ejected though, which is how I glitched all over the place. It's kinda scary, actually. When I'm fully permeable, I can't feel, breath, see, or hear anything. All of it just goes right through me." The crowd started mumbling, but something didn't sit right for Izuku with that explanation, and after quick deliberation, he spoke up. "That doesn't make any sense though, Mirio-senpai. If everything goes through you, including light, if you really turn blind while permeable, then how can we still see the parts of your body that are permeable? Also, how would your body even function at the boundaries between permeable and impermeable? Does your blood just suddenly know when it goes over the boundary and changes itself? How do the permeable and impermeable parts even know to stick together and not phase through each other, like your muscles or skeleton?" Mirio-senpai paused and suddenly looked quite bewildered, and Amajiki, who had somehow been observing the fight despite looking at the wall the entire time, looked concerned. Hato-senpai butted in though. Hey, those are some interesting questions, Greenie. What's up with that, Mirio? Do you know anything about that?" The upperclassman scratched his head. When it manifested, it turned out to basically be an exact copy of my dad's quirk, so we just left it at that. I don't think Dad knows how his quirk works either, so I have no idea." He shrugged. Hato-senpai pouted. "Ugh, Mirio, you're no fun. Now I want to know the answers." Hey, Greenie, you're the one that asked the questions. Do you have any ideas?" Izuku got into a thinking pose and tuned out his surroundings as he got into his mumbling zone transcribed for your reading pleasure. "Well, the only logical thing that would fix the whole boundary issue is if there are no boundaries in the first place. But if you still want the quirk to work, that means that Mirio-senpai's entire body is permeable all the time. So that raises the question of how he can act impermeable when needed. When I was still discovering the mechanics of my quirk, I learned that the reason fusion doesn't happen except in extremely high-pressure situations is because of the electromagnetic force. We never actually physically touch anything. The illusion of touch comes from different atoms getting repelled by the like charges of their respective electrons." Before confusing his classmates too much, Izuku left the mumbling zone again. "Got it. Mirio-senpai, I think your body is always permeable, but you use an electromagnetic field like the one I have to act like an impermeable object from the outside, and your quirk is just changing that field to drop the illusion of impermeability when you need to be permeable in a specific area. And it probably absorbs and emits all incoming light all the time, which is why we can always see you." Izuku thought back to the quick fight he had with Mirio-senpai with this new information and came to another conclusion. Mirio-senpai, when you poked me in the eye, you did use your quirk correctly. I think my electromagnetic field was just strong enough at that moment to interfere with yours." Mirio-senpai's bewildered look changed to one of mild understanding as he let out a sheepish laugh. "I see. Well, good to know my quirk control didn't go sloppy over the break then. Wait, how come I can't breathe or go blind all the time then?" Hato-senpai, who seemed extremely into the discussion, spoke excitedly. Oh, Mirio, didn't your support partner figure out that a costume made with your hair works with your quirk back in our first year? You're wearing the P uniform version right now." Izuku finished off the trail of logic. I see. So if normal material is mixed or surrounded enough with your own material, then it somehow gains the same properties of permeability. As for the seeing thing, something to do with the field absorbing light in a different way around your eyes, which gets disrupted when that field is changed to activate your quirk. I don't know. Maybe that's why your eyes look so unique. Mirio-senpai still looked like his entire worldview had turned upside down as Aizawa-sensei stepped in. "All right, problem child. What did I say about giving people existential crises?" "You didn't, sensei." "Well, I did now. Time to get sparring, you hellions. Here's how it's gonna go. I'll put you into 4 different groups based on proficiency, and each group will have one of us 4 as instructor. The support students will be making notes up in the seating area the entire time. Now get moving." In the end, the sparring turned out to be pretty fun. Izuku ended up in the group with the second to most proficiency along with Kakin, a girl with her hair in a high ponytail called Yairozu, and a tall, six-armed guy called Shoji. They had Hato Senpai as instructor, who, despite her ditzy attitude, turned out to be a pretty good, decently observant teacher. After a good while, Aizawa-sensei ordered the hero and support students back to their respective classrooms, and for the hero students to leave their costumes in the 1A classroom. He had one more thing to say before dismissing them, though. All right, class, most of you didn't actually do awful this time, but I expect improvements from here on out. And also, in case I forget to tell you tomorrow, you'll be picking class representatives before the end of the day. So figure out who you want to choose now, or how you're going to convince your classmates to choose you. That's all for today. I'm going to inform Powerloader that the coffee machine here is broken as well. After Aizawa-sensei left the gym, Izuku quickly found himself walking towards the UA entrance gate with his uniform back on. This time casually walking with Kaken, Kaminari-kun, and Uraraka compared to his frantic run yesterday. Kaminari-kun was trying to get a conversation going with Kaken, so Izuku was addressed by Uraraka instead. So, Midoriya-kun, I actually wanted to say this before the lunch bell interrupted us, but I think it's super cute how you call Bakugo-kun Kaken. Not knowing how to respond to that, Izuku just stammered until Kaken replied instead, more than happy to ignore Kaminari-kun. Oi, round face, if you want Zuku to call you something like that, you'll have to hammer it into his skull, or else the best you're going to get from him is Uraraka. Uraraka, clearly having been found out, stammered back. Oh, well, it's just really cute, you know? But IW wouldn't mind if, Izuku gained his bearings again before the conversation could completely devolve into stammering. Oh, I didn't realize you wanted sorry. This doesn't really happen. How does Cheiko-chan sound? Uraraka stopped stammering and squeezed with her hands up to her cheeks. Oh my gosh, that sounds adorable. Midoriya-kun, you're so cute. I can't even believe it. Oh, can I call you Dash? 0.1. Any further conversation with Cheiko-chan was interrupted when what appeared to be Hatsum came storming towards them with the aid of rocket booster boots. Is she even allowed to bring her inventions outside of the studio? Before he knew it, Hatsum was already coming to a standstill right next to them and bonked him on the head with a notepad. I can't believe it, 0.1. We have so much stuff to talk about for future improvements for our babies, and you didn't even come to me after that foundational heroics class. She pouted while Cheiko-chan screamed babies in the background. Is now really the time, May-san? Izuku asked. She huffed in response as she started scribbling on her notepad. Of course, 0.1. Science never sleeps. And apparently neither do you if the Quirk counseling files are correct. She looked back up at him, the glint of mania back in them. I hope you won't mind if I borrow you to help me with some all-nighters. You're the perfect lab partner. All my previous lab partners back in middle school just developed insomnia and fled to a different school after a month at most. Hatsum chuckled ominously. Izuku skipped over that last bit for his own sanity and spoke up. Actually, now that I think about it, May-san, I'd like to find a way to direct those wins I made during the fight against Mirio-senpai for my hands and feet, if that's possible. She gave an appreciative nod and turned towards the gate, dragging Izuku away from his friends with an iron grip. Yeah, I could whip that up for you in a jiffy. Anyway, I read that you can expand your magnetic field by speeding up your heart at the risk of heart attacks. I'm not going to ask how they figured that last part out, but would you mind if I replaced your heart with a bionic one, 0.1? I can guarantee you that it won't blow up most of the time. Wait, hold up. I don't want to be a cyborg. Izuku yelled as he was dragged out of UA by an unrelenting Mei-san, who seemed like she was a cyborg herself already. Mei-san looked back at him with a questioning gaze. Who wouldn't want to be a cyborg? Now let's go to my home lab. I want to test your quirk as much as I can for personal reference, and we're going to be at it the whole night if it's up to me. I spoke too soon yesterday, didn't I? Izuku lamented as they left UA's towers behind them. Quirk Science Notes. Explosion. This quirk mutates the sweat glands in the palms of the user's hands to produce a special substance mixed in with their sweat. This substance on its own is inert and not explosive at all, but when it gets excited by a specific frequency of radiation, which the hands also produce at the user's will, its chemical structure shifts around into a much more reactive form, similar to how retinal changes shape in the eye when it absorbs light. This reactive form readily explodes around body temperature, which can easily be achieved by the user flexing nearby muscles. Permeation. This quirk turns the user's body into a similar but permeable type of matter, which also seems to passively generate a small-scale electromagnetic field to allow the body to keep interacting with the physical world. The user can manipulate this field to turn parts of their body permeable. When the user has part of their body in the same place as other solid matter, when turning impermeable again, the electromagnetic field gets repelled by the electrons inside said solid matter towards the nearest gap of air.